All right. I'll be talking about Nimrod, Abram. All right. And I'll be coming out of Jasher, the Tanakh, and Josephus. All right. Hopefully, it's a good understanding. It's gonna be like a reading, but I believe you'll enjoy it. We'll start off with Isaiah 61 and 7 first. It says, instead of your shame, you will have a double portion, and instead of humiliation, they will shout for joy over their portion. Therefore, they will possess a double portion in their land. Everlasting joy will be theirs, for I, the Lord, the Most High, love justice. I hate robbery and the burnt offering, and I will faithfully give them their recompense and make an everlasting agreement with them, the Israelites. Then their offspring will be known among the nations, and their descendants in the midst of the peoples. All who see them will recognize them because they are the offspring whom the Most High has blessed. I will rejoice greatly in the Most High. My soul will exalt in my power, my God, for he has clothed me, he's dressed me with garments of salvation, he has wrapped me with the robe of righteousness, as a bridegroom decks himself with a garland, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. For as the earth brings out its sprouts, and as a garden causes the things sown in it to spring up, so the Most High power will cause righteousness and praise to spring up before all the nations. For Zion's benefit, I will not keep quiet, and for Jerusalem's benefit sake, I will not keep quiet, until her righteousness goes out like brightness, and her salvation like a torch that is burning. The nations will see your righteousness, and all kings your glory. All right. And let me get this Isaiah, I think 66. And it says, for behold, the Most High will come in fire, and his chariots will like the whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For the Most High, the Lord will execute judgment by fire and by his sword on all flesh. And those dead by the Most High will be many. All right. So let's go into this thing. Let's go into Genesis. Yeah, yeah. Real quick. Let's do Nimrod. Genesis 10 and 8. All right. Cush also begat Nimrod, who was the first man of might on earth. He was the first man of might, strength on earth, power. He was a mighty hunter. He was a powerful hunter by the grace of the Most High. Hence the saying, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter by the grace of the Most High. The mainstays of his kingdom were Babylon, Urch, Akkad, and Chaldea, and the land of Shinar. Alright. Alright. So now, let's get, we're going to go into the book of Joshua. Alright. Now, book of Jasher, chapter 7. I'm going to start at 23. All right. And Cush, the son of Ham, all right, the son of Noah, took a wife in those days in his old age, and she bare a son, and they called his name Nimrod, saying, at that time the sons of men again began to rebel and transgress against the Most High. All right. They began to sin, break the laws, and go against God. Well, Nimrod, his name means rebellion, all right, or the valiant. So his name means rebellion. And we know that he's a son of Cush and grandson of Ham, all right. And we know that he made cities, right? Um, and of course, he made an empire in Shinar and the classical Babylonian. All right, Babylon. All right. So, getting back to where we was at, it says, in those days, in Cush's old age, um, his wife bare a son, and they called his name Nimrod, rebellion, saying, at that time the sons of men again began to rebel, right, and transgress against the Most High. Men have went off and they were out of order. And the child grew up, and his father loved him exceedingly, for he was the son of his old age. And the garments of skin which the Most High made for Adam and his wife, when they went out of the garden, were given to Cush. For after the death of Adam and his wife, the garments were given to Enoch, the son of Jared. And when Enoch was taken up to the Most High, he gave them to Methuselah his son. And at the death of Methuselah, Noah took them, the garments, and brought them to the ark, and they were with him until he went out of the ark. And in their going out, Ham stole those garments from Noah, his father, and he took them and hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begat his firstborn, Cush, he gave him the garments in secret. And they were with Cush many days in secret. And Cush also concealed them from his sons and brothers. And when Cush had begotten Nimrod, and his name means rebellion, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up, and when he was 20 years old, he put on those garments. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments. That's what it said in Genesis 8. Nimrod, who was the first man of might on the earth. All right, so he grew strong. He grew up. He was about 20, and Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments. And the Most High gave him might and strength. He gave him what? Might and power. And he was a mighty hunter in the earth, like it says in Genesis 10:8 or 10. He became a mighty hunter in the earth. Yeah, he was a mighty hunter in the field. And he hunted the animals. And he built altars. And he offered upon them the animals before the Most High. And Nimrod strengthened himself, and he rose up from amongst his brothers, and he fought the battles of his brethren against all their enemies round about. And the Most High delivered all the enemies of his brethren in his hands. And the Most High prospered him from time to time, in his battles, and he ruled upon earth. He ruled the land. Therefore, it became a current in those days. All right, so it became prevalent in those days when a man ushered out, when he went out, and those that he had trained up for battle, for war, he would say to them, like it says, like God, but like the Most High did to Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter in the earth, and who succeeded in the battles that prevailed against his brethren, that he delivered them from the hands of their enemies. So may the Most High strengthen us and deliver us this day. So that was their pep talk. All right. That's what was said. All right. So in the Tanakh, it says, uh, Genesis 10 and 9, Nimrod, he was a mighty hunter, and by the grace of the Most High, here the saying, this is how the saying came about, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter, by the grace of the Most High. All right. That was being like a chant, you know. That was what was being said back then. Um, and before they went out to war. So chapter 7, verse 36 in Jasher, and he said to them, do not fear, neither be alarmed, for all our enemies will be delivered, given into our hands, said Nimrod, and you may do with them as you please. Treat them however you want. 37. And all the men that went were about 500, and they fought against their enemies, and they destroyed them and subdued, that means took them captive. And Nimrod placed standing officers over them in their respective places. And he took some of their children as security. This is the first child trafficking. It says, and he took some of their children as surety, and they were all servants to Nimrod, all slaves to Nimrod, and to his brethren. And Nimrod and all the people that were with him turned homeward. And when Nimrod had joyfully returned from battle after having conquered his enemies, all his brothers, together with those who knew him before, assembled to make him king over them, ruler over them. And they placed a regal crown upon his head. And he sat over his subjects, the slaves and peoples, and princes and judges and rulers, as is the custom amongst kings. And he placed Terah, the son of Nahor, the prince of his host, his army, and he dignified him and elevated him above all his princes. Sounds familiar? Familiar when Pharaoh raised up Joseph to be his right hand man? Well, Terah, the son of Nahor, the prince of his army, and he dignified him and raised him above all his princes. And while he was reigning according to his heart's desire, after having conquered all his enemies around, he advised with his counselors, his advisors, to build a city for his palace. And they did so. And they found a large valley opposite to the east, and they built him a large and extensive city. And Nimrod called the name of the city that he built Shinar, for the Most High had vehemently shaken his enemies and destroyed them. And Nimrod lived in Shinar, and he ruled securely, and he fought with his enemies, and he subdued them, and he prospered in all his battles, his wars. And his kingdom became very great. And all nations and tongues, languages, heard of his fame, and they gathered themselves to him, and they bowed down to the earth. To the what? To the earth. And they brought him offerings, gifts, and he became their Lord and King. Who became their Lord and King? Nimrod. And they all dwelt, that means lived, with him in the city at Shinar. And Nimrod ruled in the earth over all the sons of Noah. And they were all under his power and advice. And all the earth was of one tongue, one language, and words of union. But Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Most High. Let's listen to that again. The verse, I'm in chapter 20, I'm sorry, chapter 7 in the book of Jasher, verse 46. And all the earth, the world was of one tongue. It was of one language and words of union. But Nimrod did not go in the ways, the paths of the Most High, right? His commandments, his desire, his will, that he didn't obey his voice. Sounds like rulers today, right? And he was more wicked than all the men that were before him from the days of the flood until those days, those times. 47. And he made gods of what? He made little gods, little elves of wood and stone. And he bowed down to them. Idolatry. And he rebelled against the Most High, the highest, and taught all his subjects, his slaves, and the people of the earth his wicked ways, his traditions. And Mardon, his son, was more evil than his father. And every one that heard of the acts of Mardon, the son of Nimrod, would say concerning him, from the wicked goeth out wickedness. From the wicked comes out wickedness. Therefore it became a proverb in the whole earth, saying, from the wicked goeth out wickedness. And it was current in the words of men from that time to this, to now, or to this. All right. So wickedness begets wickedness. All right. And Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's army, was in those days very great in the sight of the king and his subjects. And the king and prince loved him, and they elevated him very high. They promoted him, they lifted him up very high. Okay? Just like Pharaoh did Joseph. All right? This is Terah, and this is Abraham's father. And Terah took a wife, and her name was Amethilo, the daughter of Cornebo. And the wife of Terah conceived, and bare him a son in those days, in that time. Terah was 70 years old when he begat him. And Terah called the name of his son that was born to him Abram, because the king had raised him in those days, and dignified him above all his princes that were with him. All right. Chapter 8. And it was in the night that Abraham was born, that all the servants of Terah and all the wise men of Nimrod and his conjurers came and ate and drank in the house of Terah. All right. Nimrod, okay, which names mean rebellion, and his conjurers. Conjurers are those that deal with sorcery or witchcraft. Came and ate and drank in the house of Terah, and they laughed, they rejoiced with him on that night. They was happy for Terah that night. All right. And he was having a boy. All right, and his son was born. It was Abram. And when all the wise men and conjurers, which, went out from the house of Terah, they lifted up their eyes toward heaven. They looked at what? The sky that night in heaven to look at the stars, and they saw, because that's the Most High's handiwork. That's okay. So they looked up in the stars, and they saw, and behold, one very large star came from the east. A what? A very large star came from the east, and ran in the heavens, in the sky, and he swallowed up the 4 stars from the 4 sides of the heavens, the sky. And all the wise men and the king and his conjurers were surprised at the sight, at the view. And the sages, the wise men, understood this matter, and they knew it's important, just like the wise men knew that was important when they saw Christ's star. All right. 5. And the wise men and conjurers went home that night. And in the morning, all these wise men and conjurers rose up early. They got up early in the morning and assembled in an appointed house. They gathered and they spoke and said to each other, behold, look, the sight that we saw last night is hidden. So they gathered together like in the synod or Sanhedrin or synagogue, churches. They gathered together and was talking about this. They said, behold, look, the sight that we saw last night is hidden, secret from the king. It's not revealed. It has not been made known to him. And should this thing get known to the king in the latter days, he will say to us, why have you hid this matter from me? And then we shall all suffer death. Therefore now let us go and tell the king the sight which we saw, and the interpretation thereof, and we shall then be clear, innocent. And they did so. They all went to the king and bowed down to him to the ground, and they said, may the king live, may the king live. But the king gonna die. All right. Ain't no king gonna continue to live but Christ and the Most High. There's only one. We heard that a son was born to Terah, the son of Nahor, the prince of your army. And we last night came to his house, and we ate and drank and laughed with him that night. And when your servants went out from the house of Terah to go to our respective homes to live there, therefore the night we lifted up our eyes to the sky, and we saw a great star coming from the east. And the same star ran with great speed and swallowed up 4 great stars from the 4 sides of the heavens. And the servants were shocked at the sight which we saw. And we were greatly terrified, and we made our judgment upon the sight, and knew by our wisdom the proper understanding of it, that this thing applies to the child that is born to Terah. He will grow up and multiply greatly. He's going to do what? Grow up and multiply greatly, Abram, and become powerful and kill all the kings of the earth. He's going to do what? Kill all the kings of the earth and inherit, that means receive, all their lands. See? You see? Land. He and his seed forever, the children of Israel, the Israelites. And now, our Lord and King, behold, we have truly acquainted you with what we have seen concerning this child, this baby. If it seemed good to the king to give his father value for this child, give him some money for this child, we will slay him before he shall grow up. Okay, we should kill him before he grow up, like they wanted to kill Christ, like they wanted to kill Moses, like they want to kill all the prophets in the prophet test. All right, before he shall grow up, right? Planned Parenthood, abortion, and increase in the land, and his evil increase against us, that we and our children die through this evil. And the king heard their words, and they seemed good in his eyes. And he called for Terah, and Terah came before the king. All right, Abraham's father. And the king said to Terah, I have been told that a son was yesterday born to you, and after this manner was observed in the sky at his birth. And now, therefore, give me the child, give me the baby, that we may slay him before his evil springs up against us. Because they're Hamites, they're Cushites, right? They're the children of Ham. It says, and I will give you for his value, for his worth, your house full of silver and gold. And Terah answered the king and said to him, My lord and king, I have heard your words. Your servant shall do all that his king desireth. All right. But my lord and king, I will tell you what happened to me yesterday, that I may see what advice the king will give his servant. And then I will answer the king upon what he has just spoken. And the king said, Speak. And Terah said to the king, Aon, son of Mored, came to me yesterday, saying, Give unto me the great and beautiful horse that the king gave you, and I will give you silver and gold and straw and provender for its value. And I said to him, Wait till I see the king concerning your words, and behold, whatever the king saith, that will I do. And now, my lord the king, behold, I have made this thing known to you, and the advice which my king will give unto his servant, that will I follow. And the king heard the words of Terah, and his anger, and was kindled. He was upset, and he considered him in the light of a fool. And the king answered Terah and said to him, Art you so stupid, ignorant, or deficient in understanding to do this thing, to give your beautiful horse for silver and gold, or even for straw and provender? Are you so short of silver and gold that you should do this thing? Because you cannot obtain straw and provender to feed your horse? And what is silver and gold to you, or straw or provender, that you should give away that fine horse which I gave you, like which there is none to be had on the whole earth? Right? So when you read that, think about a child. Just because you can't provide, you can't feed it or whatever, the Most High gave it to you, and He's saying, You that stupid to give it away or abort it to kill it? It's worth more than what you think it is its value. But I'm gonna jump down, right? You read it for yourselves. Um, um, I'm gonna jump down. Um, I'm gonna jump down. I'm gonna jump down real quick. Uh, 27. And the king heard the words of Terah and the parable which he brought concerning the king. It grieved him greatly, and he was angered at this thing, and his anger burned within him. And Terah saw that the anger of the king was kindled against him, and he answered the king, saying that all that I have is in the king's power. Whatever the king desires to do to his servant, that let him do. Yea, even my son, he is in the king's power without value. In exchange, he and his two brothers that are older than he. And the king said to Terah, No, but I will purchase your son for a price. And Terah answered the king, saying, I beseech you, my lord and king, to let your servant speak a word before you, and let the king hear the word of your servant. And Terah said, Let my king give me 3 days. Give me 3 days till I consider this matter within myself and consult with my family concerning the words of my king. And he pressed the king greatly. Give me 3 days, give me 3 days to agree to this. And the king listened to Terah, and he did so, and he gave him 3 days' time. And Terah went out from the king's presence, and he came home to his family and spoke to them all the words that the king and the people were and the words of the king, and the people were greatly afraid. And it was the third day that the king sent to Terah, saying, Give me your son for a price, as I spoke to you. And you should not, eh, and shouldest you not do this, I will send and slay all you have in your house, so that you shall not even have a dog left. And Terah hurried, all right, as the thing was urgent from the king, and he took a child from one of his servants, which his handmaid had borne to him that day. And Terah brought the child to the king and received value for him. And the Most High was with Terah in this matter, that Nimrod might not cause Abram's death. And the king took the child from Terah and with all his might dashed his head to the ground, for he thought it had been Abram. And this was hid, concealed from him from that day, from that time. And it was forgotten by the king, as it was the of will of providence, not to suffer Abram's death. And Terah took Abram his son secretly, together with his mother and nurse, and he hid them in a cave. And he brought them their provisions monthly, their food monthly. And the Most High was with Abram in the cave, in the cave. And he grew up, and Abram was in the cave 10 years. And the king and his princes, soothsayers, and sages thought the king had killed Abram. But he didn't, because the prophecy must be fulfilled. And so that's a little bit on Abram's birth and the things that were going on. And like Herod wanted to kill Christ, you know, the devil wants to kill and stop the plans of the Most High, but he can't. It was already written. And so, um, we're going to get into some more of Mr. Nimrod.